Here is something that almost no one tells you when you are sitting in that exam room staring at a blood sugar number that has been climbing for years. If you are someone who wants more videos that explain the why behind what is happening in your body, rather than just handing you another prescription, hit subscribe, give this video a like, and leave me a comment right now telling me what your morning fasting number was this week. I genuinely read those comments, and the ages and numbers of the people watching this channel directly shape what I cover next. So, let us get into it. Here is what almost nobody explains to you in a standard 12-minute office visit. High blood sugar almost never starts with blood sugar itself. It starts upstream with a hormone called insulin. But here is what happens when you spend years riding the blood sugar roller coaster. Years of large glucose spikes, years of the pancreas pumping out wave after wave of insulin. Year after year of that relentless signaling, the cells eventually stop answering the door. The insulin arrives and knocks, and the cell simply does not respond the way it should. That is insulin resistance. The door is closed, the glucose has nowhere to go. So it stays in your bloodstream and your blood sugar climbs. Your pancreas, sensing that the glucose is not clearing, tries to compensate by producing even more insulin. More knocking, more signaling, higher and higher insulin levels circulating through your body. But the cells are not listening, and so blood sugar continues to rise. And the standard medical response is a prescription that pushes even more insulin into a system that is already overwhelmed by it. Here is the reality of how that system works. There's no revenue model built around teaching you how specific foods talk directly to your insulin receptors. There is no time in a short office visit to walk through the cellular mechanisms of inflammation and receptor sensitivity. So I'm going to do that right now. My name is Dr. William, and every single one of the 10 foods we are covering today does one of 3 specific jobs inside your body. It slows the rate at which glucose enters your bloodstream after a meal. It cools the chronic low-grade inflammation that is keeping your cells deaf to insulin, or it directly reactivates the insulin receptor so that your own body can finally do the work it was biologically designed to do. You do not need to implement all 10 tomorrow. Add them gradually over the next 2 weeks and let them stack on top of each other. The combined effect is where the real transformation happens. The first food is fenugreek seeds. These are small, hard, amber-colored seeds, and you can find them in the spice aisle of almost any grocery store for just a few dollars. If you walk past this one because it sounds unfamiliar or exotic, you are leaving one of the most powerfully documented blood sugar tools available sitting on that shelf, and it costs less than your morning coffee. Here is exactly what fenugreek does inside your body. The seed is densely packed with a specific type of soluble fiber called galactomannan. When that fiber encounters the water and digestive fluids in your stomach, it swells into a thick, viscous gel, and that gel physically slows the rate at which your stomach empties carbohydrates into the small intestine. Instead of a flood of glucose hitting your bloodstream all at once and triggering a massive insulin response, the sugar trickles in slowly and steadily. No flood means no giant spike. No giant spike means no panic release of excessive insulin. The system stays calm. But fenugreek does something beyond fiber as well. The seed contains a specific amino acid called 4-hydroxyisoleucine that appears to help the pancreas release insulin more efficiently and improves the ability of muscle cells to absorb glucose from the bloodstream. In my own practice, I have consistently watched fasting blood sugar numbers begin to fall within 1 to 2 weeks in patients who added fenugreek consistently. To use it effectively, take 1 teaspoon of the whole seeds and soak them overnight in a glass of water. In the morning, drink the water and chew the softened seeds before you eat breakfast. If the slightly bitter taste is difficult for you, grind the seeds and stir half a teaspoon into yogurt or sprinkle it over eggs. Start with a small amount. The fiber in fenugreek is potent, and your digestive system will need a few days to adjust comfortably. The second food is cinnamon, and I would be willing to bet you already have some in your kitchen right now. But the specific type you have almost certainly matters, and most people reach for the wrong one without knowing it. The cinnamon most commonly sold in grocery stores is cassia cinnamon. And cassia contains a compound called coumarin that can be genuinely harmful to the liver when consumed in daily doses over an extended period. The cinnamon you want is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled as true cinnamon. It is milder in flavor, significantly safer for daily use, and it is the specific variety I recommend to my patients. What makes Ceylon cinnamon work on blood sugar is a group of naturally occurring polyphenols, plant-based chemical compounds that behave in a remarkably similar way to insulin itself at the cellular level. These polyphenols help your insulin receptors bind to glucose more effectively, and they slow the rate at which your stomach empties after a meal, which reduces the speed and height of the glucose spike that follows eating. The effect is real, measurable, and clinically documented. Research from the Human Nutrition Research Program at the USDA found that less than half a teaspoon of cinnamon per day produced a meaningful reduction in fasting glucose in adults with type 2 diabetes. Use approximately a fourth to half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon daily. Stir it into your morning coffee, blend it into a smoothie, or mix it into oatmeal. The most strategic timing is to pair it with a meal that contains carbohydrates. That is precisely when you want your insulin receptors functioning at their most responsive, and your stomach emptying at its most gradual. Third on this list is broccoli sprouts. And I want you to pay particularly close attention here because this is the most consistently underused food in this entire video. I am not talking about full-grown broccoli, the large heads you find in the produce section. I'm specifically talking about the tiny 3-day-old sprouts. The distinction is not cosmetic. It is the difference between a meaningful therapeutic effect and almost none at all. Broccoli sprouts are extraordinarily rich in a compound called sulforaphane, and the sprouts contain somewhere between 50 and 100 times more sulforaphane than mature broccoli. Sulforaphane does something that none of the other foods on this list accomplish quite as directly. It travels to the liver and reduces the liver's excessive overnight glucose production. Here is something many people with high blood sugar do not know. Your liver manufactures glucose while you sleep. It is a normal biological process, but in people with insulin resistance, the liver produces far too much of it. This is why so many of you wake up with a high fasting blood sugar number that you genuinely cannot explain. You have not eaten anything all night, and yet the number is elevated. That is your liver overproducing glucose while you are sleeping. A study published in 2017 from Lund University in Sweden administered concentrated sulforaphane to individuals with type 2 diabetes and produced a measurable and statistically significant reduction in fasting blood sugar, with the most pronounced effect seen in exactly the patients whose numbers had been the most difficult to control through other means. You can grow broccoli sprouts on your own kitchen counter in a glass jar for essentially no cost. Or you can purchase them fresh in the produce section of most health food stores. A small handful, approximately a quarter cup eaten on a salad or tucked into a sandwich most days, is sufficient to produce a meaningful effect. Do not cook them at high heat. The active sulforaphane compound is destroyed by intense heat. Eat them raw or at most very lightly wilted. The fourth food is the avocado. And I want to address the fear around this one directly because that fear is genuinely costing people results. Many individuals avoid avocado because of its caloric density and its fat content. And that avoidance is based on a misunderstanding of what type of fat avocado actually contains and what that fat does inside your body. The fat in an avocado is predominantly monounsaturated fat. This is the same family of fat found in olive oil, and it is one of the most blood sugar supportive compounds you can put on a plate. The mechanism is straightforward. The combination of healthy monounsaturated fat and soluble fiber inside an avocado significantly slows the digestion of your entire meal. When you add half an avocado to a plate that contains rice or toast or any other carbohydrate, you are not removing the carbohydrate. You are placing a biological brake on how rapidly that carbohydrate converts into blood glucose. Instead of a steep rapid spike, the glucose rises gradually and gently. The insulin response is proportionate rather than panicked. And beyond that mealtime effect, monounsaturated fat has been demonstrated in clinical research to improve overall insulin sensitivity, meaning your cells begin to respond to insulin more readily and efficiently over time. In my clinical experience, the avocado is also among the easiest additions on this entire list to sustain as a habit because of how satisfying it makes a meal. Patients who add half an avocado to breakfast consistently report that the mid-morning cravings that used to drive them toward processed snacks simply disappear. Half an avocado per day is a sensible and practical amount. Add it to your morning eggs, spread it on whole grain toast, or slice it into a salad that already contains a starchy component. Wherever there are carbohydrates in your meal, avocado belongs alongside them. Fifth is chia seeds. These are small gray and black seeds that are deceptively powerful given their size. If you have ever stirred chia seeds into water or milk and watched them transform into a thick pudding texture within minutes, you have already observed exactly the mechanism by which they work inside your digestive system. Chia seeds are among the most concentrated sources of soluble fiber available from any whole food. When they meet the water and digestive fluids in your stomach, they form the same thick gel we discussed with fenugreek. And that gel wraps around the carbohydrates in your meal, coating them and dramatically slowing their absorption into the bloodstream. The result is a slow, steady, controlled release of glucose over a prolonged period, rather than the rapid flood that triggers an outsized insulin response. But chia seeds offer a second and separate benefit that makes them particularly valuable in addressing the root cause of insulin resistance. They are a rich source of plant-based omega-3 fatty acids, and those omega-3 fats help reduce the chronic low-grade inflammation that is sitting at the cellular level and physically blocking the insulin signal from getting through. When that inflammation is cooled and reduced, the cell membrane becomes more receptive and insulin can do its job with far less resistance. 1 to 2 tablespoons of chia seeds per day is the target amount. Stir them into yogurt, add them to a glass of water with a squeeze of lemon, and let them sit for 10 minutes before drinking. Blend them into a smoothie. The key is to give them adequate time to gel and to drink sufficient water alongside them because soluble fiber of this density requires adequate hydration to move through the digestive system comfortably. The sixth food is fatty fish. And when I say fatty fish, I mean specifically salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring. This food does not work by slowing your meal down the way the fiber-based foods do. It works at a deeper and more fundamental level. It works on the underlying reason your cells became resistant to insulin in the first place. Insulin resistance is driven in very significant part by chronic systemic inflammation. When your body exists in a state of persistent low-grade inflammation year after year, that inflammatory environment physically and chemically interferes with the insulin receptor at the surface of the cell. The signal cannot get through the inflammatory noise. Fatty fish are among the richest available sources of two specific omega-3 fatty acids called EPA and DHA. And these compounds are among the most potent natural anti-inflammatory agents we have identified in decades of nutritional research. When EPA and DHA reduce the inflammatory signaling throughout the body, the cell membrane becomes healthier and more fluid. The insulin receptor regains its proper structural function, and the cellular deafness that has been building for years begins to reverse. In 15 years of clinical practice, I have observed consistently that patients who eat fatty fish twice per week maintain calmer and more stable blood sugar numbers and also demonstrate meaningfully better blood pressure alongside those improvements. 2 servings per week, each approximately the size of your palm, is the practical target. Wild salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring are all excellent choices. Bake them, grill them, or if budget is a consideration, buy them canned. Canned mackerel and sardines in particular represent some of the most affordable and most nutritionally powerful foods in this entire video. 7th on the list is walnuts. Of all the nuts available, walnuts are the one I direct my patients toward most specifically and most consistently. And the reason is that they accomplish 2 separate and important things simultaneously. Walnuts are rich in polyunsaturated fat and in the plant-based form of omega-3 fatty acid, the same anti-inflammatory compound found in chia seeds. That fat improves the function of the endothelium, which is the thin but critically important cellular lining on the inside of your blood vessels. The endothelium is one of the first structural elements that chronic high blood sugar begins to damage. Protecting and supporting it matters enormously for long-term cardiovascular and metabolic health. At the same time, the specific combination of fat, fiber, and protein in walnuts produces a measurable blunting of the blood sugar rise after a meal. Research has also demonstrated that regular walnut consumption can lower fasting insulin levels, which is the underlying number that tells you how hard your pancreas is straining to compensate for your cells not responding properly. When fasting insulin comes down, it is a reliable sign that insulin sensitivity is genuinely improving at the cellular level. A small handful, Approximately a /4 cup or 7 to 10 whole walnuts consumed as a snack in place of crackers, cookies, or other processed options is the practical daily target. Keep them raw or dry, roasted without added sugars or coatings. Use them to replace a processed snack rather than adding them on top of your existing eating pattern. The eighth food is whole eggs, and I mean whole eggs with a yolk included. For years, public health messaging pushed people toward egg white-only preparations and away from the yolk, largely due to concerns about dietary cholesterol. And that guidance steered enormous numbers of people away from one of nature's most blood sugar-friendly breakfast foods and towards cereals and toast that were doing their blood sugar far more damage. A whole egg contains virtually no carbohydrate. It is composed almost entirely of high-quality protein and fat. On its own, it produces essentially no meaningful rise in blood glucose, but the most powerful effect eggs deliver is something researchers call the second meal effect. When you begin your day with whole eggs instead of a grain-based breakfast, you stabilize not only your blood sugar at breakfast, but your response to the next meal as well. You walk into lunch with a calmer baseline and a smaller subsequent glucose spike. The protein and fat content of eggs also produce a sustained satiety effect that eliminates the mid-M morninging blood sugar-driven cravings that send people reaching for processed snacks between meals. In my practice, the single dietary swap that most consistently produces a rapid and visible improvement in morning glucose readings is replacing a cereal or toast breakfast with 2 to 3 whole eggs. 2 to 3 whole eggs in the morning is a practical daily target for most people. Scramble them. Hard-boil a batch at the beginning of the week for convenience or prepare them with spinach and other vegetables folded in. Add the avocado from food 4 directly on top and you have assembled what I consider nearly the optimal blood sugar breakfast. The ninth food is apple cider vinegar. And this is the item on this entire list that produces the fastest and most visible effect on an actual blood glucose meter. If you have a meter at home, you can observe this working tonight before your next carbohydrate-containing meal. The active compound in apple cider vinegar is acetic acid. It acts through 2 distinct mechanisms. First, it slows the rate at which your stomach empties after a meal, which means carbohydrates arrive in your bloodstream more gradually rather than all at once. Second, acetic acid appears to enhance the ability of your muscle cells to pull glucose out of the bloodstream and utilize it for energy, which directly reduces the post-meal spike. The research behind this is substantial and specific. Work conducted by Dr. Carol Johnston at Arizona State University found that consuming a tablespoon of vinegar before a carbohydrate meal reduced the post-meal blood sugar spike by approximately 20 to 30% in individuals with insulin resistance. That is a meaningful drug-comparable effect from something that costs a few dollars per bottle. The practical protocol is 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar always diluted in a full glass of water. Consume 10 to 15 minutes before a meal that contains carbohydrates. Never drink it undiluted. The acetic acid is damaging to tooth enamel and the esophagus when taken without dilution. And if you are currently taking any prescription medication for blood sugar management, please discuss this addition with your doctor before beginning. Vinegar combined with blood sugar medication can lower glucose faster than expected and must be monitored appropriately. The 10th and final food is lentils. And this one makes the central point of this entire video more clearly than anything else on the list. Lentils are a carbohydrate and lentils will lower your blood sugar. Understanding how those two facts coexist is the key to understanding why the approach we are discussing works when simple carbohydrate restriction alone so often fails long-term. Lentils are constructed from a specific type of carbohydrate called resistant starch, wrapped in a substantial layer of soluble fiber and accompanied by a meaningful amount of plant-based protein. That structural combination means the glucose inside the lentil is released into the bloodstream with extraordinary slowness and consistency over hours rather than minutes, producing a gentle and sustained rise rather than a sharp and disruptive spike. Lentils also carry their own version of the second meal effect. A bowl of lentil soup at lunch produces demonstrably steadier blood sugar, not just through the afternoon, but into the early evening as well. Clinically, substituting white rice or white potato with lentils several times per week is one of the most reliable dietary interventions I know for producing a measurable reduction in A1C. which is the 3-month average blood sugar measurement that reflects your overall glucose control across time. A half cup to 1 cup of cooked lentils several times per week is the practical target. Use them in soups, stews, or cold salads dressed with olive oil and a splash of the apple cider vinegar we just covered. They are filling, they are economical, and they stretch a meal further than almost any other food while simultaneously working in your favor biochemically. Let me tell you about a patient I will call Margaret. She was 63 years old, recently retired, and she came to see me frightened. Her fasting blood sugar had been sitting consistently around 180, and her physician had just informed her that it was time to add a second medication to her regimen. She did not want that. She was afraid of spending the rest of her life climbing the medication ladder, adding one drug after another while her numbers continued to deteriorate. And her fear was not abstract. She had watched her own mother lose first her toes and then her eyesight to the same disease. She came to me asking if there was anything else she could do. We did not strip her diet down to nothing. We did not eliminate carbohydrates entirely. We added eggs and avocado replaced the cereal she had been eating every morning. A tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in water became her ritual before her largest meal of the day. Lentils replaced white rice several nights per week. Walnuts replaced the afternoon cookies she had been reaching for out of habit. Fatty fish appeared on the menu twice a week. Ceylon cinnamon went into her morning coffee. Broccoli sprouts went onto her sandwich at lunch. Within the first week, her fasting numbers began to move downward. Within 3 months, working in close coordination with her own doctor, she had been able to come off that second medication entirely. Her A1C had moved from within the diabetic range back toward normal, and 2 years later, it is held. She did not starve herself. She ate more food than she had been eating before. Just the right food, and her own biology did the rest. Let me tie all 10 of these foods together and explain the unified mechanism behind why this approach works when carbohydrate restriction alone so often fails over the long term. Every single food on this list is doing one thing fundamentally. It is giving insulin its proper job back without requiring you to deprive yourself of entire food categories. The fiber-rich foods fenugreek, chia seeds, avocado, and lentils slow the delivery of glucose so that your pancreas never has to produce an emergency-level insulin response. The anti-inflammatory foods, fatty fish, walnuts, and chia seeds cool the chronic cellular inflammation that has been physically blocking the insulin signal from reaching the receptor. The receptor-sensitizing foods, cinnamon, apple cider vinegar, and broccoli sprouts, work directly on the insulin receptor itself, helping it grip glucose more effectively and respond to insulin more readily. Do that consistently, meal after meal, day after day, and the cell that has been refusing to answer the door gradually begins to open it again. That is what reversing insulin resistance means at the cellular level. And once it happens, your body maintains your blood sugar on its own, which is exactly why results like Margaret's hold for 2 years and beyond. Before I give you the specific action plan for tonight, I need to draw one clear and unambiguous line. If you are currently taking insulin or a sulfonylurea drug, which is one of the older classes of blood sugar lowering medications, these foods can and do lower blood sugar with enough speed and consistency that your current medication dose may become too high. That situation can produce dangerously low blood sugar, which is a medical emergency. Add these foods with your doctor actively monitoring your numbers. Let your physician walk your medication dose downward in response to your improving results. Do not stop any prescription on your own. Instead, bring this list to your next appointment and have that conversation directly. Here is what to do starting tonight. 5 concrete steps that you can begin immediately. Step 1. Tomorrow morning, replace your cereal, your toast, or your typical breakfast with 2 to 3 whole eggs and half an avocado. That single swap will change your blood sugar trajectory for the entire day, not just for breakfast. Step 2. Tonight, soak 1 teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in a glass of water and drink it first thing tomorrow morning before you eat or drink anything else. Step 3. Buy Ceylon cinnamon, specifically Ceylon and not cassia, and begin a /4 teaspoon per day stirred into your coffee or oatmeal. Step 4. Before your largest carbohydrate meal tomorrow, mix 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar into a full glass of water and drink it 15 minutes before you sit down to eat. Step 5. This week, substitute lentils for white rice or white potato at least twice and put fatty fish on the menu for 2 dinners. Stack these additions gradually over the next 2 weeks. You are not taking foods away. You are adding the foods that protect your biology and restore the function your body was designed to have. Now, everything we have covered today addresses blood sugar during your waking hours, after meals, and throughout the day. But a significant number of you have told me that the highest reading of your entire day is the very first one of the morning before you have eaten a single bite of food. You fasted all night. You consume nothing. And yet, the number is elevated or even higher than it was the evening before. There is a specific and well-understood biological reason your liver does exactly that while you sleep. And there is a targeted and practical way to interrupt that process and wake up to a lower number. I made a dedicated video that walks through exactly what is happening during those overnight hours and what you can do about it. I will have it on the screen for you right now. Go watch that one next, and I will see you.